Hello, dear students. In this video lesson, I'm going to introduce the poet H.W. Longfellow and his poem A Psalm of Life. You might have heard the name of the poet, that is H.W. Longfellow. H.W. Longfellow was an American poet, the popular poet of America, and he wrote the poem A Psalm of Life that you are going to study in the fourth sem BA and BSc. Longfellow is an American poet as Americanness, that is an ideology of America. America in the world today, it is imposing everything on the mind of the people around the world. That is what we see and we have been experiencing that. So here the poet Longfellow, being an American poet, here he tries to focus on the waves of imperialism. Right. His poetry represents simple themes, beauty of verse, and the natural grace. We see these three things in his poetry. The characteristics of his poetry are mainly focused on spirit of joy, optimism, and faith in the goodness of life. The present poem, Psalm of Life, was written in 1938. He depicts the narrator's perspective on the value of life and virtue in life. The poet imposes to incorporate the virtue and value of life in every walk of life meaningfully and effectively. Here you can observe that the poet is speaking on life and how the life should be. According to the poet, life should be incorporated the virtues and values of life. This is what the poet is going to mainly focus in his poem. How the man should lead the life. What should you follow? These things are uh, discussed in the mode of argument in the present poem, A Psalm of Life by H.W. Longfellow. Let us see now, when we look at the title, A Psalm of Life. The word PS ALM is quite unique in the composition and unique in its pronunciation and unique in its sense of the word. Let us see in what context the poet H.W. Longfellow used the term relating to the life, human life. See that psalm is a word used with religious connotations. In the present poem, psalm, the word, is used in the religious connotations. In every religion or in any religion, we see the sermons. The sermons are going to preach. When they are preaching, they would like to impose the teachings on the people. So here the word psalm is used in the religious connotations. The poem reads like how the poem is. The poem reads like a prayer of hope and prayer of joy, a prayer of optimism, and a spiritual recipe for living our lives. See that psalm is a prayer in the form of song. What does the poet is going to? What does the poet pray? What does the poet sing? While singing, he has a purpose behind this. What are those purposes? And how the poem should be read like this? And what should poem has? These things are answered like a prayer of hope, prayer of joy, a prayer of optimism, and a spiritual recipe for living our lives. These things are mainly concentrated. These are the features that you find in the particular poem, A Psalm of Life. The poet in the poem emphasizes the importance of courage and optimism. We see the the poet is going to highlight the importance of courage for the man and importance of optimism for the man to lead the life meaningfully in this world. Psalm is a song or a hymn in praise of God. The poem begins with an optimistic argument, and the poem is full of arguments in 9 stanzas of each 4 lines. There is an argument. Argument continues. It develops by stanza in all the 9 stanzas. It is held between the optimist and the pessimist. The argument. A argument should have 2 people or 2 minds or 2 ideas. Here in the poem we see the argument between the optimist and the pessimist. Here the narrator is an optimist. He is going to argue and discuss and convince the facts of life, the hopes of life, the spirit of life to the pessimist. On the one hand, reader on the other hand. There is a negative imperative tone when the poet begins his argument. like. Now let us see how the poem begins with an imperative sentence. That is, an imperative is negative imperative. There is a imperative, negative imperative tone in the very first line of the poem, A Sum of Life. Tell me not in mournful numbers, life is but an empty dream, for the soul is dead that slumbers, and things are not what they seem. See the lines, how simple. Tell me not in mournful numbers, life is but an empty dream, for the soul is dead that slumbers, and things are not what they seem. The statement we can find in the four lines that the poet, that is the narrator in the poem, is negating the views of the pessimist. He is submitting, the pessimist is submitting that life is full of empty dreams and there is nothing in the life. This is what the pessimist felt, and it is decided there is nothing in the world, it is full of empty dream. This is the statement he put forward. For this statement, the narrator, that is the poet, he begins his argument with the word, tell me not. Don't tell me. In mournful numbers, life is but an empty dream, for the soul is dead that slumbers, and things are not what they seem. The pessimist is telling and explaining that life is nothing. There is nothing in the life. There are only empty dreams. So these are the notes and opinions of the pessimist. For this, the poet is telling, you need not say to this to me. He says, see that what the poet is telling to the pessimist, and how he is going to submit his views to the belief of the pessimist, that the poet speaks about dreams and reality of life. The poet states that future things will be certain when the fellow is positive in his present life. See that. How he is going to reveal the reality of life. And he is going to give the difference between the illusion and reality, dreams and reality, fancy and reality. He states that future things will be certain when he is positive in his present life. That means if the speaker or if anybody can be positive in his views, and if he has a positive hopes in the present life, he can expect the positive result in future. That is what the poet is going to convey. If he is negative in his hopes and dreams, on the other hand, the future will be uncertain. The poet is telling that the future will be certain and uncertain. It depends on the man who lives in the present life. If he lives negatively, with a negative attitude, he should certainly have the negative result. If he lives positively, then he can certainly get the positive result, the positive future. It leads him to say that life is but an empty dream. When he is negative, he argues there is zero in the life because his soul is dead in sleep. The passive listener, the passive speaker, his soul itself is dead in sleep. It naturally does not have bright vision of life. A passive man, he doesn't have bright vision of life because he lives passively. He is not active enough. So the poet rejects the statement, life is but an empty dream. It was openly rejected in the very beginning of the poem itself. But the poet says in turn that life is full of passions and dreams to act and enjoy the life naturally. See that the poet is giving the counter argument that life is full of passions, dreams to act and enjoy the life naturally. It is a law of nature, further he says, and there is a reality in nature. Nature has reality. So the poet further says in the second stanza, he continues his argument. Life is real and life is earnest. Life is real and life is earnest. And the grave is not its goal. Dust thou art, and to dust returnest, was not spoken of the soul. See, here the poet is speaking about reality of life. What exactly is in life, or what exactly the life is, and how the life should be. This is what the poet is going to argue and discuss with the passive listener in the poem. See that the poet in the second stanza he begins like this: life is real and life is earnest. There is a reality in the life. We should not escape from this. And if the life is active enough, if the man is really living, he should be earnest. That means there is eagerness, there is a thirst in the man who is really living. He wants to achieve. He wants to do something. He is always in thirst. There is a eagerness in his mind always. That means it shows he is so positive enough to achieve something best in the life. Here the poet argues that life is real and life is earnest. That means no moment should be discarded and destroyed meaninglessly. Every minute of human life should be calculated, and where the man should utilize every moment of his life meaningfully by doing the good deeds to achieve the best. The poet believes in the present and not in the past and the future. He strongly believes the present. Present is visible. Present can be sense present can be feel. But the dead past and the future is invisible. One cannot see the reality in the future. One cannot predict the future as we present the present. When he lives actively in the present, he can have hopes better. So he should be earnest in his spirit of life and accept the facts in the present as it is. So the poet advises the pessimist that the goal of a man is not always a grave. Pessimist is always thinking to escape from this life, either by committing suicide and he is looking forward for the death and he is looking forward for the grave. It is already decided and man should die when he gets birth. That is the law of nature. But within that span of life, he should do something and leave something valuable in this world as a footprints to follow by the others in future. That is what he should think. He reminds that grave is for the body. Grave itself is real. There is no illusion of the grave. It is a fact. Man should die. Man should go to the grave. But grave, it is for the body. But not for the soul. Hence, soul is immortal for him and body is mortal. The mortal thing, human body, it is certainly meant for the grave, the physical body. But the soul is immortal for the poet. It happens naturally whether the man does good deeds or bad. But he should live with the earnest spirit of life, because for the poet there is hell and heaven which is found so far, but it is just believed so. The people in this world strongly believed that there will be two worlds, that is the hell and the heaven. Hell is bad and heaven is good. This is the concept we the people have. But here Longfellow is focusing on, is telling that, is arguing that both the hell and heaven are in the present life itself. There is no any other world of hell and heaven for him. The poet points out that both are in the present life only, that should be pursued with perseverance. In the present life, with a great perseverance, he can get into the either hell or heaven. That depends on the man who is going to act in the present life. Then it leads him to experience the both respectively in his life. He should experience the reality of the hell, the reality of the heaven in the present life itself. He is accepting the both. He is accepting hell as heaven and heaven as hell. So in this context, I would like to quote the words of Saturn from Paradise Lost, where the Saturn says, the mind has its own place, it makes hell of heaven and heaven of hell. Therefore, we should feel that. We should convert hell into heaven, heaven into hell. That depends on the willing power of man and his mind. So Saturn, when he was thrown to dungeon, where the hell is created, in the hell itself, he was the king, and he is that is advising, instigating, and inspiring fallen angels. Unconquerable will, he says. He uses the word Milton. Unconquerable will. The will of man should not be conquered by anybody else. Though he is in dungeon, still he was a king in the dungeon itself. God is the king in the heaven, but Saturn is king in the hell itself. He feels hell as heaven and heaven as hell. How wonderfully Milton has quoted this word through the Saturn, the reality of life. Right, let us see the remaining argument of the poem in the next session. Thank you for listening to this session. Thank you. Let us meet in the next session with the argument of H.W. Longfellow regarding the life. Thank you.